So a judge has denied a bid by Q Shaman to toss out his January 6th conviction. A federal judge Thursday denied a bid by January 6th rioter Jacob Chansley, better known as the Q Shaman. They're calling him QAnon Shaman. It's Q Shaman, okay? To vacate.
Why would you know that, though?
to vacate his conviction in light of footage now, incoming investigation. I'm done for now, HC.
Sorry.
To vacate his conviction in light of footage from the Capitol that day aired by ex-Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Chansley, who stood out from the January 6th crowd for wearing face paint and a horned headdress, I actually thought he fit in pretty well. I don't know if he stood out that much during the riot, pleaded guilty to obstruction and was sentenced in November 2021 to 41 months. Now, this is something I want to mention. I was obviously being a little tongue-in-cheek there. What happened on J6 was on one side of the building, you did have people who broke through the window and broke in. On the other side of the building, the police literally opened the doors and let people in. So you had just a lot of regular people who were there as protesters who were walking through and were catching charges because of it. It's crazy. There was actually a judge who had to let somebody off because the footage that they had of the event proved that he basically went and spoke to a police officer, and he wasn't told that he couldn't leave. In order to charge someone with trespassing, they can't think that they're allowed to be there. But of course, we know that the left, they don't care about law and order at all, and that goes in two directions. That goes in the direction of not prosecuting people who are breaking the law, and of course prosecuting people who didn't break the law, and refusing to exonerate someone even when footage comes out showing that they were not guilty of the crime of which they were accused. Now, that said, in this particular story, I can't give you all the intricacies and details. It's possible that they still had something on him. But overall, with the pattern that I've seen with these hearings, they're all too willing to be as harsh as possible on people who really either have a very good excuse or actually didn't break the law at all. And there are some people who were genuinely violent who should be locked up. There's no question about that. But again, we don't see any of the people who broke down the barricades at the White House being arrested. There was not an investigation into the 2020 riots, despite a majority of the American population wanting investigations. According to polling data, far more people than wanted investigations into January 6th, because the J6th, investigations were not about protecting the American people or our democracy. They were about protecting people in power and having you ignore the fact that cities were literally set on fire and allowed to burn for several months at a time.
Well, it is a crime to withhold exculpatory evidence, and that's what the J6 committee
that's true.
did. And if that had been extended to other famous cases, you think of Hands Up, Don't Shoot. You think of Kyle Rittenhouse, right? When evidence comes out, different angles, different cameras, different footage, and you get to paint the whole picture, it somehow changes the verdict a little bit because the jury sees everything. There was no jury, obviously, in the J6 trial, but the fact that they withheld all of this, and obviously this footage wasn't brought into Jacob Chansley's, it's shameful for the judge, right?
Yep.
And it's shameful for Benny Thomas and the entire J6 committee and all the people who partook of it. That's why the Republicans turned so much on Liz Cheney, why they turned so much on Madeline Kinzinger. Not because they were part of J6, but because they knew that they were withholding evidence like this. They knew that they were withholding crucial pieces of data to tell the full story, and wanted to at Trump.
Yep.
And that's an unforgivable crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. This is a complete perversion of justice. I do remember reading that story, now that you mention it, that evidence was actually withheld. I mean, again, these people care nothing for rule of law. They don't care about the process. They care about the outcome. That's
the evidence that Tucker showed of the Capitol Police walking Jacob.
I saw that,
walking him up the stairs. The door was locked. They found another door. They opened up the door. They walked him to the floor of the Capitol.
Gave him a back rub, brought him hot cocoa.
Yeah, he gave his prayer. Thank you, Lord God Almighty, for the United States Senate. Thank you for the Capitol Police who are keeping us safe. And then they walked him out and he went home.
Yep.
So again, people could say, well, he still broke the law by being there. But that really changes things a little bit from the narrative that they showed at J6.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that somebody is a trespasser when police officers literally walk them through the building and tell them that they can be there. I mean,
you would have thought if he was doing something illegal, they would have perhaps been the one to notice it.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy. I know that's a crazy expectation.
The police were in on the insurrection.
But why aren't they getting brought up on charges then?
Well, because if that evidence had been
story
showed, who were those cops? Those cops now have to testify. Why did you walk Jacob Chansley? And did you get an order? How did you think?
And we already made the Capitol Police the heroes of this story, right?
Yep.
I mean, so
unravels.
I was I got the chance to sit in on opening when we did opening statements for the Proud Boys trial. This group of guys that were selected by the U.S. government to represent the masterminds of the conspiracy, right? Because there were a couple people who they like swapped in and out at the last minute. It was crazy. But one of the things that I remember the most, and I wrote about it for Timcast News, if you want to find that article, is
good job, HT.
thanks. Was that the U.S. government went first, and it was like, here is a clip of text messages they're having, or here is a video, or here is a voice memo, and then each man was represented by their own attorney. So there were a lot of attorneys. They had lots to say, but most of the time they just expanded it. Instead of taking one tiny clip like the U.S. government, they were like, here is the context of what they're saying. And it was very difficult to believe. One of the attorneys there said it best. These men couldn't organize ordering as a group from McDonald's. You think they organized a conspiracy? But the fact of the matter is, the U.S. government, really the American media, needs someone to take the fall. They need to have whipped the people into a frenzy, and they cannot say that there was no one at fault here.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is disturbing, right? Because we are not carrying out justice for the people. We are carrying out justice for these corporations and the administrative bloat that says we did the right thing and we will prove it to you with our own tools.
Well, even the whole narrative surrounding January 6th and the idea that it's an insurrection is so unbelievably ridiculous. These people were grasping at any straw they can possibly grab at to try to indict and criminalize Donald Trump or prosecute Donald Trump, make him out to seem as if he was trying to subvert our democratic process, when in reality they were doing that with this fraudulent, nonsensical investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election and his collaboration with them. When you actually look at the narrative, what they're effectively saying is that Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, the most powerful person on the planet, with all of the resources available to the executive branch at his fingertips, wanted to overturn a fair and free election, and his genius plan to do so was by dog whistling to a bunch of boomers to go inside of the Capitol and not do anything violent.
Yeah.
What?
Was a great plan.
He literally, an incredible plan. He literally said, go have your voices heard. He didn't tell them to be violent. He told them to be nonviolent. He told them to go protest.
Yeah.
Not break in, but even so, if he had some kind of secret dog whistle that only the other conservatives could hear, and that's why they went in there, it seems like a pretty lame thing to dog whistle when you're trying to overthrow the United States government, to get a group of people. I mean, it really was a mostly peaceful insurrection. It was the only person who was harmed. The only person who was harmed was one of the protesters, poor Ashley Babbitt. That woman was killed. That woman was killed. If someone was killed at a BLM protest, they would be a martyr for the country. I'm not kidding. We would have statues of them. The police officer who shot them would be locked up. We would melt the key down and then pour the metals it was made of down the drain.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So I'm desperately digging in my backpack because I have a relevant note.
Looking for a point to make.
Well, someone told me that there was another protester at January 6th who had a heart attack and then later died.
I heard about that,
but we don't hear his name. So I'm just trying to see if I can pull it from my notes. No one quote me on this.
Well, I mean, I'll give you a second to find those. But this is something we
to me
always
while I
saw.
Do some journalism.
Listen,
I think that person was still on the mall. Actually,
yeah.
If my facts are right, I think that person didn't even make it to the Capitol, and I think they were older. I think they were.
I have Kevin Greeley as a name. Nobody quote me on this.
Nope.
Media. I'm just looking back at my notes.
The media.
But it is interesting because people did suffer because of these riots. And the representation is that they were all armed and dangerous and crazy. And Donald Trump sent them there. And meanwhile, the video showed these supposed leaders saying, no one go in. Don't go in there. Like, this is the worst insurrection ever. If the leaders who apparently conspired to do this are telling you not to go in there.
Yeah, it's a really bad idea. It's a really bad insurrection.
I just don't understand. And especially because we did not see the same kind of vicious pursuit of people who really did burn businesses in the summer of 2020. How can you say that this is worth spending? I'm going to go back to our first story. Millions of dollars investigating, right? How come we don't have a system of justice that represents people outside of Washington? If you were an American voter and you had a business that burned in Minneapolis or in any major city, and you know that they just said, well, we're going to let them go. They didn't feel heard and it's okay. But because it happened to us, the federal government, we are going to use the full weight of our purse strings to go after these people.
It's so crazy
That's exactly
how
right.
fast it shifted focus from like everything else they were going after Trump for, and then all of a sudden like, I was watching it live, and I'm like, okay, so now this has happened. Everything else was forgotten about, essentially.
Yeah.
And the main focus and a show trial on this for the next however many years.
Yeah.
And all for what? Like, it's crazy.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.